Welcome to the Traveller 2025 Mayday event. I'm your host, Frank Succardi of CyborgPrime Games. I have with me today a very interesting guest. I have my friend, Geir Lanesskog, freelance writer for Mongoose. Hi, Geir.
Hi.
How are you today?
Oh, doing pretty good. Trying to finish up some stuff on a couple of projects for Mongoose. So there'll be things in the future.
Great. So, Geir, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Who are you and what do you do?
I've done a lot of things, but what's relevant is I've kind of been doing freelance work for Mongoose for the past 5 years, ever since COVID gave me back the time I used to spend sitting in traffic. Been able to focus a little bit more on writing, and kind of sold them Spinward Extents back in 2020, and kind of been doing a book or two every year since then. So that's the relevant part. In the past, I've done some other writing and some art, but I'm really more a writer than I am an artist because I can't really draw.
So you first got involved with Mongoose doing the Spinward Extents. How'd that go? How did you get in that? How did you get that project, or how did you get involved with Mongoose?
Well, the Deep Night series had just come out, and I wanted to kind of solo play it. And then once you get off the map past the Trojan Reach, you get into what Paranoia Press did years ago for the Beyond and the Vanguard Reaches, and they were horrible. There's no gas giants. The worlds didn't make sense. The races didn't make sense, and I just got frustrated with the entire concept and decided to start doing subsectors for the Beyond again. And then that went pretty well in the forums, and suddenly I had more time on my hands, and I kind of, with some encouragement from others, basically did a cold call and say, hey, can I do this for you? And Matthew Sprain said, sure, but you got to do Vanguard Reaches as well, like two subsectors per book. So that got me started, and then I've kind of picked up some projects, either stuff that I want to do or stuff that's on their list that they need done. And 5 books now, I think, and a couple more hopefully this year.
Awesome. 5 books. What all books have you written?
I did the sector construction kit, or guide, which I was hoping would be more of a kit, but they didn't want to go with stencils and colored pencils. They just went with a bunch of subsector sheets. So still, it kind of builds on how you develop a region. So it came straight out of what I did for Spinward Extents. It's just this is the logic I went through to build out a frontier region, how long it takes to settle, and things like that. And then I did some rewrites for them a redo the central supply catalog needed to be updated, and that was a kind of a fun, simple project. Followed by the complicated project of what I really wanted to do, which was robots, because there really wasn't anything done with robots. So I did the robot handbook pretty much from scratch. Stole some ideas from slots that they put on Battle Dress, and kind of went with it from there. So that one's been very successful. I'm still answering questions on the forum even today, literally today, on various aspects of that book. So it's definitely, that one was a lot of fun to do. Okay, we need to pause. No, I'm seriously, I'm like losing my little tiny brain here. That's 3.
Let's see, Robot Handbook, World Builders Guide.
Oh, of course, God. Okay, we got World Builders. So which one am I missing again?
Let's see,
I don't know why I can't think.
Central Supply, Spinward Extents, Robot Handbook, and Sector Construction Kit.
Okay, so I do only have World Builders left. I do.
Okay.
All right. Sorry, I can't even count. I'm sober too. It's bad. Okay, unpause. and then I did World Builders Handbook, which was also thing that I really wanted to do. It's been a long time since the book Six Scouts came out, and that book was great for 1983, but I just finished a couple of college astronomy classes and had some issues with it, and that made me learn about astrophysics and then learn about programming in order to do it. And the next thing you know, I got a job in the computer industry, and now it's 40 odd years later, and basically Traveller got me that job because I ended up with 10,000 lines of code to make star systems that became obsolete, and 10 years later when the first actual star systems were found. But I still have a great deal of interest in that, and was able to pull together a lot of my notes from before and a lot of my ideas to how to make it work with Traveller. And Worldbuilder is another one that comes up a lot in the forums as people have questions and things. So that one was also kind of, I want to do this, and they let me. So I appreciate that a lot.
How did you go about kind of organizing and researching for Worldbuilder and Sector?
Well, the Sector was basically off the top of my head. It was just kind of the process I used for trying to figure out how far something, I mean, civilization kind of goes out at Traveller speeds, and just the probability and the density of various races and randomness on that frontier. So it's probably one of my weaker projects, but it helped build out new environments. I mean, larger scale environments. Maybe someday we'll do a Pocket Empires thing that will take some of that and make it a little bit more solid. I did a fake For Even, because For Even is still a free sector, but I did the my version of it, and then my version of the one quality that they actually have down there. But it's not official. Everything in there is just as an example. This is what you can do with For Even. There's probably 7 or 8 other versions of For Even out there, all off the same star map, but then everything else besides 4 or 5 systems is divergent, and that's been the intent since probably 1985 as well, reserved for referee use. But the book would give you a way to build that environment as well. As for world builders, that's all the other worlds in the system, right? That's focused more on, here's your star system, here's your main world, or start with just the star system, build out a bunch of planets, and figure out which one could be your main world. That uses at least what's known today of 5,000 exoplanets, and will probably be obsolete in 20, 30 years when we get a better statistical sample. But at least it's compatible with real science, as far as I can tell, or as far as real science is today.
Did you have to calculate probabilities, or did you just like divide the set into even, sections, or did you use a combination of different techniques for the different ways you divided up information?
I mean, for my version of For Even and the
well, like
guide?
say for instance for Worldbuilder, like you have maybe so many. What do I want to say? Like so many categories for each of the like planetary aspects or whatever. How did you kind of go about figuring out how to break that down or make that into usable charts?
Well, it's Traveller, so you got to use 2die6 as much as possible. Although I do have stuff in there where you can emulate a die 10 or a die 100, with 2die6 close enough for government work, especially if you don't mind re-rolling. So I took the ideas that were in previous versions, both the book Six Scouts and the Traveler's Digest, World Builders from 1989, I think, and expanded on those concepts, ignored the ones I didn't like, and kind of built it out so that the systems would look like actual solar systems that are being discovered. So yeah, it's 2 or 3 dice, but there's also math in there. To the extent that somebody wants to use it, there's logarithms in there if somebody wants to do it, for things like atmospheric pressure at altitude. So there's tons of formulas in there, but you can also just use the little parts of it. In fact, I say several times in there, it's map only is really necessary. In other words, if you want to drill down on one aspect, you can just use that one part of the book for whatever you're trying to accomplish. It's kind of organized after you do the stars and the orbits. It's organized by the standard size, atmosphere, hydrographic, population, law level, and government and law level, and tech level. Pretty much higher detail. If you've seen the 1989 version of the World Builder's Handbook, it follows a lot of that format where it made sense to do so still. So.
Awesome.
It is roll 2 dice, but with proper DMs. Okay, sorry,
Gotcha.
I interrupted you.
Right. I was just saying that building worlds and systems was a favorite pastime of mine when I was a teenager. I can't say how many star systems I built, and I was fascinated by, like, it was like programming, but in a book with dice.
Mm-hmm. Well, that was the first simple program I did on a Commodore 64 was just the regular subsector rules for doing that, and I would spit those out. Pretty much press a button, there's your subsector. But then I got interested in how the things actually worked and developed my own incompatible but compatible with science sort of version of that. And then what you get with the world builders is kind of a back-fed model of reality into Traveller rules with Traveller orbits and the statistics you expect to see for a world. So everything from gross national product or gross planetary product to specific types of factions. I expanded a lot on what the one little half page of factions that's listed in the Traveller core book. Now I kind of gave that several pages of how to define the factions and how prominent they are and what they do and relationships between them. So again, you could spend hours and hours on one star system, or you can just use it to try to figure out what the atmosphere of one weird world is on roll 2 dice and pick methane.
Cool.
It all depends.
All right.
Somebody
cool.
has done I was going to say, somebody has done a single star system version of it. And I provided advice, but no programming help on that. I tested it with a giant spreadsheet that I wouldn't give to anybody because it kind of breaks your computer when you try it.
Have you ever seen or used Heaven and Earth?
No, I haven't.
It's an old Traveller sector generation program, but it has problems. Let's see. All right, so tell us a little bit about Spinward Extents. Clearly, people will find the Spinward Extents in there, but what all kinds of information is in there? Like what's the elevator pitch for that?
Oh, it's a standard 2-sector book. It has the structure to expect. It's got the polities. It's got one career. It's got some tips and some mostly tips, sectors. I think I threw a couple of vehicles in there, and then the various governments. So it's beyond the imperial border. So most of the governments are small, the populations are lower, the tech level's a bit lower. I don't think from the beyond, I don't think there's anything above 13, and the only 14s in the Vanguard reaches, I believe, are Zodani. So, it's just kind of a small state region, sort of like the Far Frontiers is. In fact, I I've been looking at that, although I don't think I can get a whole sector book out of it, at least a couple of subsectors. If I get my rewrite of Legend of the Star Raiders and that whole trilogy redone, at least I can throw a couple of subsectors from Far Frontiers in. Not that I'd want to change anything there, because those were actually really well done, as opposed to, hopefully the Paranoia Press people aren't still alive or
not
or paying
listening to this
attention.
interview.
And I apologize if they are, but I just didn't really care for the actors at all. I mean, it was like 1 in 6 gas giants as opposed to 5 out of 6 systems had gas giants. You couldn't even refuel to get across it. And it was just frustrating.
Well, inspiration can come in a lot of forms. It can come in the form of frustration. Or seeing how something could be improved, or something that's just been bothering you that you thought you could maybe do better if you had to stab at it, or who knows? Maybe they did things they did for a reason that we're not aware of, but they just never worked out, and they don't matter anymore. So now we do it can do it a different way. Yeah. So it's a good opportunity.
Frustration was the issue there. Robot was more. I saw a need, and in the Pirates book, they have the Aslan robot that basically acts as your ship's engineer, and I'm like, probably would be easier to have half your crew be robots, but there's really no good way to build them. They seem to just kind of be dropped in there randomly without any rhyme or reason. So that one I had to make the 40-ish pre-existing robots fit into a design sequence, and other than pricing, most of it kind of worked. So that was more see the need to and then try to standardize it. For that one, the spreadsheet works really well. So there is a spreadsheet you can download and make robots with that works
very
really
cool.
well, except for formatting. Yeah, except for formatting. So I've been working on a new redo of the vehicle handbook, and part of that is also going to be a spreadsheet in addition to the rest of the stuff. And probably through better experience, I've figured out how to format it much nicer. So instead of having to alphabetize and remove a bunch of commas, it does all that stuff for you, and then prints out a nice little vehicle sheet, or shows you a nice little vehicle sheet. You can print it if you want.
Cool.
But that is supposed to be this year, because it's called Vehicle Handbook 2025.
Right.
So it better be this year.
Yeah, cool. Let's talk a little bit more about the Robot Handbook. So what can people expect to find in that book?
There's the standard kind of background stuff on Third Imperium and universe sort of robot rules and history, but it's designed to be a general book on building robots. So it goes through and basically you design the body, add limbs, give the limbs characteristics, add a brain, add software, weapons, armor, environmental protection. So basically, all the stuff you'd expect to be able to do with the vehicles, you can do with a robot, and it kind of lets you build anything from well, actually, there's a whole section on nano robots too, but it's that part you can't really build. It's more like you buy a bag of nanobots. But there's micro robots that you can get. And I just did a Journal of Traveller Society article on size 0 robots, which are basically the bug size stuff, and that kind of an addition after the book that have now updated the spreadsheet to hold. So if you get the journal, you can also build smaller robots that are more specific size wise, bigger than the tiny little microbots, but smaller than the I don't know what size one would have been, probably rat. So call it a Natbot, I guess.
Okay, the micro drone, mini drone.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Cool. And where did you get where did you kind of come up with the ideas for that, or what kind of research did you have to do for the robot handbook to make sure you covered all the robotic systems that people were going to expect, you know?
Yeah, and that's the thing on that one. You know, I said I had 45. I went through all of the Mongoose version 2 stuff and found 45 robots that already existed. And so there's your skeleton right there. Is these are the characteristics you expect to see in all of them. So you have to be able to accommodate that. And then within there's more detail that you want to include. I mean, there wasn't until that robot book, you know, statistics for the strength and the dexterity of robots. There wasn't a list of options, and that's the main thing. Is there's a list of various options that you can put on the robot for additional capabilities. Everything from gecko pads, so you can walk on the ceiling, to environmental protection, to nuclear thermal reactor. Well, not reactor, but one of those stuff that they use for Voyager and things to power it.
Antimatter pods.
Yeah, well, you know, I really kind of.
Dilithium crystals.
No, we kind of went with the standard Traveller stuff. I think that was probably that, or the redo of the Central Supply Catalog is where I started to sneak Fusion Plus in there.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
So and that's also going to be in that upcoming vehicle. And I did that's another JTAS article was on how to add Fusion Plus. So that I think 15, I forget which number that is, but it's in one of those. So that's kind of a preview to where that's going. That'll be in the new one. But basically, a robot is a small vehicle. The big problem probably is the use of slots as a generic sizing thing, where I took that from Battle Dress. You know, you buy a Battle Dress, you have 20 slots, and you can put a bunch of options in. And I thought, that would work really well for robots. You just, you know, you got the body, and then you have this many slots available to add options. Some of them don't take any slots. Some of them take 4 or 5 or 10 or 15. But that worked well, except there's compromises. And in hindsight, I wish I would have gone with, you know, cubic centimeters or liters or something. But that may be too detailed for what's usable in the game. It's easy to, you know, count to 16. It's harder to count to 412.2, right? So there's a compromise there between realism and usability. Especially for a tabletop role-playing game, you're not supposed to have to use a computer to play.
Right.
Although you can.
Right. So let's talk about the Central Supply Catalog. That was an update?
That was just an update, and like I said, I think there's much Fusion Plus in there as well, but added some more stuff.
Like, what's involved in an update? Do you have to go through and, like, what gets updated? No. Like, just errata?
Yeah, it's errata. It's additional equipment. I mean, basically, I was given the earlier version of it as text, and then there's a little bit of cut and paste, but mostly it's rewriting and then reorganizing, adding additional things that I thought would be cool. Some of it stuff that I had already invented for robots, but yeah, the introduction, it was rewritten. I did some more stuff on fabrication. There really wasn't anything on, you know, 3D printing, even though that's kind of become important. It obviously wasn't even a thing back in the 80s when Traveller came out.
Right.
In fact, that Sky Raiders thing that I was talking about that I'm supposed to be redoing is they have like a tech level 10 computer that's like a computer one weighs 40 kilograms, and like, yeah, my iPhone does more than that. So Traveller kind of missed the whole electronics revolution, but I think a lot of us did. We expected flying cars and rocket ships, and we got iPhones instead. So.
Yeah, iPhones that are bricks, unless there's a worldwide communications network in place.
Well, yeah, but the capacity on the machine itself is pretty impressive, I would say. But yeah, Siri doesn't work unless it can talk back to a data center somewhere.
Right. So the like, where do the ideas come from for the central supply catalog? Like, what or actually like, what section was bolstered the most? Do you think?
Well, definitely the fabrication part at the beginning, and then I just kind of added, I did a little bit with structures again. In that book, I had at least options to add the structures. Some of that existed in the first book. It's kind of a little fuzzy in my head, other than adding stuff. What besides fabrication was really brand new, and Fusion Plus. Otherwise, it's just a little bit more equipment. Things that I thought would be cool to have. One of the things in robots that I added, I know I'm skipping around, but that's just the way my poor mind works, was these micro robots so you can make like little action figures. They had one set of that in the old Central Supply catalog, but I kind of made it into a robot you can make and then different sizes of it. So you could have like a little tiny micro hero that's, ant sized, where you could have an action figure that's probably what 4 or 5 inches tall. Um, and it's a robot, so I had to give it the capabilities of the robot, which means that you can potentially oh yeah, that's what I added, like avatar helmets, things like that, where you basically put on the helmet and then you can take over the robot or behave like the robot. There's various interface options. There's a flow chart on how robot interfaces work in the robot handbook.
Oh,
But
that's
that
very
book we
cool.
took out. Yeah, we took out the robots entirely from the Central Supply catalog. So the old one had a few robots in there. Those all got moved over. So that was a big change.
Mm.
But a lot of it was the same. The specialized ammo, the weapons. I probably added more weapons from various sources. The very rapid fire Gauss gun was a big thing back when I was doing Traveller originally, and the only place you could find it in a Mongoose publication before then was in some PDF only um, supplement in the back. So I took some of the stuff that was in various random places and tried to include them. I can't get every item from every adventure, and you shouldn't even try. But I did try to grab things that I thought would be useful and more widespread.
As a camping enthusiast, I always like the idea of like a self-assembling tent with an airlock, or some of
Yeah,
the
that is an
crazy
option. Yeah.
sci-fi, gear, self-assembling cots. We basically have those now,
Hmm.
they're just unfolding or whatever, umbrellifying, or whatever you call that, folding. Nesting
Yeah.
folding thing that all the new chairs and cots and things are made out of.
Yeah, I had an option to add that to some of the equipment and some of the housing. I can't remember what it was called off the top of my head, but that along with self-sealing, which of course is really handy, especially if you're on a vacuum world and you expect damage from meteorites or random gunfire to affect your housing.
Mm-hmm. Wild animals with pointy horns.
Yeah.
Let's talk about some of your current work. Have we covered all your existing stuff?
Yeah, I think at a high level we pretty much have. Current work has been spent the last few months on the vehicle handbook update, taking some of the ideas from the way I did robots and applying it to vehicles. I This is another one of those that came out of frustration. It just was very difficult to build. I felt it was difficult to build vehicles with the old book. Um, a lot of people have done high guard starships where you basically do it as a spreadsheet and figure out, how things flow out. And I've done a couple of versions of that for starships. I could never get one to work for vehicles. It was just too disorganized. I mean, things did not flow in a way that made it easy to automate or to replicate in a standard way. So just like I did with robots, I started with the spreadsheet. If I couldn't define it well enough to be able to put it into a spreadsheet and pull it off of a table, then I had to redo it until it was. So that philosophy, takes about a month before you can really start doing stuff. But the current vehicle one is, I think, on its 50th iteration, and there's still some bugs in it. But everything flows in such a way that it can be built, and you should be able to decompose what you see as the end result into something that can be replicated. And I just had trouble with that with the vehicles, especially. A lot of times I think people just kind of winged it. Hate to say it, but some things just don't seem to fit, or I can't replicate what was done. So hopefully these are all built up. Everything that's going to be in there is going to be built using the spreadsheet, so it better be consistent. There's some discussion right now, and I don't know where it's going to end up, of just having the rules in one book and then having like a big catalog of vehicles in another book. We'll see how that goes. That may be the way it gets released, but I'm not certain that's been decided. I also wanted to put a bunch more infrastructure things in there because there's 10 types of vehicles. One of those types is a structure, so something that has all the features of a vehicle except for the locomotion part. And, basically all the stuff that you can do to a vehicle, you could do to a building. And I may have gone a little overboard with what you could do with flying cities and things. So a lot of the infrastructure stuff that I threw in there, including, in High Guard you can build a space station into a high port. I wanted to have enough detail where you could build a downport, which means you need to deal with hangars and runways and fencing and all that stuff, communication systems that are separate, like basically a tower and things like that. Well, that's not really a vehicle, so maybe that'll be a different book. But I think I managed to save some of the recreational spaces, but otherwise the rest of that's a different book.
What so this is is this like a modular toolkit where you can kind of like put things together, or do things have to like do modules down the chain depend on previous modules being in place?
It is more like if you're familiar with the current one, you pick your chassis type, your vehicle type, and then you add stuff to it, and then you can add a bunch of options and weapons and things like that after that. So the basic characteristics are based on that first type, whether it's an airplane or a submarine or a grav vehicle. And then there's some features that are common to some or all of those different types that you can apply that changes the cost and changes the capabilities. Like add jets to an airplane, add supersonic, you have to add jets, because your prop thing won't go supersonic because the propellers would break. But
Right. Mm-hmm.
so, and then after that, there's all the options and weapons and seating, and I did put a lot of that into the Mongoose forum as I was kind of developing it, and I've kind of gone a little radio silent on it as we're getting closer to the end, because I'm not sure at this point what's going to get pulled and what's not. But that project has been a lot of fun because I am working with other people as basically kibitzers here. I put the rough draft out and the rough draft of the spreadsheet out, and there's been 4 or 5 people that have kind of provided feedback and additional vehicles, and I think it's a better product for it because a lot of the things that, basically alpha testers for this thing, they come back and say, hey, how come I can't do this, or why does that not work? Or hopefully between 4 or 5 brains we have thought of everything. Although everything can't be put in the book. That was one thing on the rules is what Matthew told me is that if you can do, I think he said 90% of what the rules need to be in 2 paragraphs, then don't use 5 paragraphs to get it to 99% or a higher percentage. And even though when I play, I'm a rules light sort of person, I like to have all that background there available whether I use it or not. So I'm more of a little bit of a stickler for lots of little rules and then ignoring them when I actually play. So it's, I don't know. It's nice to be able to fall back on them, but it's sort of like what I said with the World Builder's Handbook is use what you need. But it helps to have that whole pile of tools there. And if you don't want to use that particular tool, don't. But I just like to have stuff available and stuff to fall back on if you want that level of detail. And it's going to depend, obviously, on the campaign or the group of people or even the time of day, whether you dig deep into the rules or just roll 2 dice and say, oh, 9, that looks good. Yeah.
Right. So how did, how granular did you get on the, subsystems of all the different vehicle chassis, I guess is like, do you have like a power plant and drive train and suspension?
No, that I wanted to, but that that was taken out. And then the same is true for robots. Is about half of the vehicle is, I call it the space that isn't there. So for every space, there's another space, and that other space includes the locomotion. Obviously, a grav vehicle has grav plates, but I mean the detail of how much space that locomotion takes up, power, whatever transmission it may need, power plant, and fuel. The detail still exists in the spreadsheet in my head, but it only appears as alterations to that ratio. So if you want more fuel, I know based on decomposing the old vehicle handbook that 40% of the space that isn't there, so 20% of the vehicle is fuel. So knowing that, I know how much range changes if you add a fuel tank or if you take out a fuel tank. We'll see if the formula makes it to the book or not. I mean, but I'm not changing the way it works. I'm just decomposing or trying to rationalize. If you have an extra space on a big vehicle, you can add 1 space of fuel and it'll give you just much more range. Where the old rules and the table only gives you like 10%, which is great if you got a small vehicle, but if you have something that's huge, you might not want to waste another 20 spaces just because that's what the table says. So use the table, use the formula. We'll see. The formulas will probably go on little blue boxes on the side instead of in the actual text. The World Builders, which is way formula, there are little red boxes and they're all over the place in that book. So if you want to do math, you can do lots of math there. There won't be much math in vehicles, and it'll probably be off to the side. So that's the way it is. The current one, has different tech levels, give you different ranges and different speeds. So that all still kind of exists, but some of the variants I've tried to make rational or rationalize it behind the scenes. The hope is if we get to do more detail for something later on, that at least this vehicle book will be consistent with a method that breaks it down further. if that makes any sense.
Hmm. What's the smallest and largest vehicle you can make?
Well, we're going with spaces, and the space is a quarter displacement ton. So that's what, 3.5 cubic meters for a vehicle. Smaller than that, you can use the robot rules. In fact, you can use the robot rules up to about 8 spaces, I think. 2 displacement tons is as big as you can make a robot. But one
So you're talking about like
space
something
is,
that's like the size of a scooter up to the size
yeah.
of.
Well, there's no upper limit really.
Mm.
You want to make a million space thing, then you can do that. And I do. There is an example flying city that I built that will house 1 million people. Um, I think some of the stuff that I put in there, infrastructure-wise, will go out, so it won't be as neat as being able to build, a flying city with a spaceport on it and stuff like that. If you could redo the Palace of Rhinax, that would be cool, but I don't think all of that will make it in there because that's more, city building than it is vehicle, and vehicle is the name of the book. So
Right. Yeah, sounds cool. What else are you working on? We mentioned earlier your interest in Star Raiders.
Yeah, that was kind of Sky Raiders. Sorry, I keep on saying Star Raiders now.
Oh, see, that's why I thought
Sky Raiders. That's
Sky
what we're trying to
Raiders.
say. Yeah, see, that's what happens. You start to get old and close to retirement, and your brain starts to go.
Sky turns into stars.
Yeah, Sky Raiders. Yes, the trilogy by the Keith brothers back at the FOSSA supplements is a project that I've kind of been assigned, but it's kind of stalled a little bit. I'm trying to figure out where the right line between updating and changing is without destroying the fun that it was. The first 2 books were a lot of fun. Third one, it all takes place around a giant generation ship, and that one I kind of want to redo entirely. So,
What's the gist of the trilogy, or what's the backstory?
well, the first one is pretty much close to Raiders of the Lost Ark. I mean, you're basically on a jungle world, trying to help a young scientist find her father who's disappeared into the jungle, and has written this controversial book about the local aliens, now primitives on the world, being the Sky Raiders from 4,000 years back, where they had technology and raided a bunch of local worlds and became part of the legend. So, first book's about going into the swamps essentially on hovercraft, which you can now build with the new vehicle handbook that almost looks just like the old ones. And the adventures that occur from that. And the second one is kind of follows there, except now you're on a different world doing different things, but finding more Sky Raiders stuff until the last part of the trilogy, or finding their generation ship that's been floating between the stars for the last 4,000 years. There are a bunch of primitives on that as well. But there's no plans really. There's just some subsections for that last one. So I don't know. It stalled a bit because I don't know how much I want to follow the script. I mean, you've seen some of the ancient stuff that's come out where Twilight's Peak has been completely redone to the point of, other than the name being unrecognizable, and I don't really want to go that far. But some stuff definitely needs updating. We can't have the simple primitives and the Nazi-like opponents on a different world and call it good anymore. I think we have to be a little bit more subtle than that. Plus, I want the aliens to be the primitives to be a playable race as well. So I've done that. Back in Spinward Extents, I did, I think, 4 or 5 playable races from those sectors. So I got that format down, and that format I also used in the sector construction guide too, to kind of do a little bit more detail on background for what the alien should look like. But it's not like a critters book, which I also have some interest in. Not like supplements supplements too. The Animal Encounters old book, but something that'll help you build an ecosystem and various animals and make it all kind of make sense. That was one of the good things with Traveller in the old days, is that their animal stuff, even though they didn't have pictures, they kind of made sense in an ecosystem, and encounter tables and all that made sense. So something I want to play with there. Probably not this year, maybe next year. The other thing that I've been working on and off, and probably on again after this vehicle stuff is done, is Pioneer, which is another universe for Traveller, essentially near future. And that's kind of hard to do given where the future is. If the first supplement is going to be about the first mission to Mars, do we set that in Elon Musk time, or do we set that in NASA time? Right? It's a little bit tricky to do something so close to the present, where if you're doing something for the far future, you can do whatever you want. But if you're doing something from 10, 15 years out, then it becomes trickier. Do we use real companies and real names? Do we invent everything? So I don't know. There's some work there that we have to figure out. But I did a draft for it last year. The mechanics, which are basically Traveller without money, is good, although I suspect I'll have to back off some of the construction stuff there as well, because I might have gotten a little too detailed on rockets and things. As an aside, on the vehicle handbook, I added speed band 11, which is orbital, and then how much energy you have to do to get from hypersonic to orbital based on the size of the world. Actually, it's really simple. So you just add 10 rounds of thrust for every size, past hypersonic. So rocket boosters is an option that you can add, and then that kind of gets you the fuel without doing a lot of math. In fact, no math. You just do addition. That's not no math, but I mean, there's no rocket equation for Traveller.
You left out the rocket science?
Yeah, I don't want to, but when I did the Pioneer draft, all of the stuff, again, it's not going to be in the book, but all of it was done using rocket equation stuff. But is that really what we want to do? I mean,
well, it lends a certain amount of verisimilitude, right? I mean, like,
it does, but honestly, the thing I did for vehicles, where you just add 10 for every 10 rounds of thrust for every size above hypersonic, which takes you, I think, 37 rounds of thrust to get to, based on the rules for how long it takes to change speed bands. That actually worked really well. You can make a tech level 8 two-stage rocket that kind of makes it to orbit, or a one-stage at tech level 8, two stages at tech level 7. So I mean, it's close enough, right? Traveller 2300 does something very kind of simplified as well. And again, if it's a tabletop game, you can't be asking somebody to do square roots and logarithms and things like that.
We'll have to slide
computer game. Oh, well, my dad never gave me his old slide rule, so I did get his old TI calculator, though.
Oh, nice. So, Pioneer, tell us a little bit more about that. So you're colonizing Mars, but do you have certain...
It's not even that. It's think of if you've seen For All Mankind on Apple TV. It's kind of it is a parallel, basically, space race where the Russians win, so the race keeps on going. The third season, I think, was basically a race for Mars, where you had 3 missions launching in the 90s, going to Mars. That sort of thing is what we would be looking for the early time frame, first adventure to go with the book. So that's more like something we'd expect in the 2030s at this point. Well, again, depends on whose timeline you believe.
Right, and Matt was describing it as like a colony building game, kind of where you're funded. You don't really have money because your goals are funded by polities or mega corporations or whatever, and you just have goals like go there and build a greenhouse, or like go there and build a habitat. I don't know,
I don't know, and that's.
Are there victory conditions you're trying to meet, or are the
that's
adventures?
The thing. It's the adventure is the adventure, right? And the thing is, that makes it hard for me too, is that arriving your mission is basically your goal. Get there, do the thing, and come back. Think of like the Google X Prize. You go to the moon and back. That didn't work, but it made a bunch of people that are now crashing and landing sideways on the moon. But the goal is basically to complete the mission successfully. So it's very different and kind of a little hard to put my finger on compared to a traveler adventure, right? Where there's not going to be aliens or bad guys or high tech, or there could definitely be sabotage and interference and a race that turns nasty, I suppose. But that's where it gets a little hard for me to know what to focus on. We know how to write an adventure. You can meet the CD underground, and you get your patron, and you do stuff. You still have a patron potentially, but the patron's like, I want you to go collect a bunch of moon rocks. Okay. Here's your moon rocks.
Right, or bring back mineral samples, or what about like industrialists, trying to claim parts of the mineral-rich, unclaimed land?
Well, I mean, there's plenty of things you can do. It's just a very different way of looking at it than the way you'd look at a regular traveler campaign. It'd be a completely different kind of feel to it. So just because it's 2 dice, 6, and you have kind of the same sort of character generation rules, that's kind of tough, because half the tables for stuff is cash for mustering out. So you got to have a table that's got no cash on it. And items, well, yeah, congratulations, you've got a boat, but we're going to stick you in a rocket and fly you to Mars, so you're not taking your boat with you. In fact, you probably only have a kilogram or 2 of personal items you can take. So, yeah, I can understand why there's no money. That makes sense. But it was interesting to then look at what are your mustering out tables look like, for instance. It's just stuff like that. You're not going to deal with weapons or money or
free ship.
I don't know. Free ship. Yeah, there's no free ship. So you kind of focused on stats, really. Intelligence increases, education increases, things like that. So it'll be interesting to see how it turns out. We probably need to give it one more run to kind of figure out exactly, make sure the fun stays in it, rather than just wait for the transit, because it's going to take you 6 months to get from here to there. But it almost has to be a race, or else you just segue from we launched and now we're approaching Mars. And the TV show did a good job on that, I thought. There's plenty of excitement, tension, a little bit of lunacy, but it can be done. It's just a different sort of adventure mentality than what we'd be used to in most traveler campaigns. Not to say that you couldn't do that, or do a lot with a traveler campaign. That's not the kind of standard patron thing or mission related. I mean, this is mission related, so it'll be just the focus would just be on that for the most part. Espionage, still a possibility.
Right. Espionage, sabotage. So let's talk about some of your other interests. You mentioned animals and ecosystems. Do you have any plans on developing an expansion about that?
Yeah, I mean,
And is that also based on frustration?
it is to a certain degree. I mean, that one I'm having a little trouble still formulating in my head. I know what I want it to kind of look like, but I'm not sure how to turn it into a nice, easy book. It's not like building a vehicle. You're building an animal, and the animal by itself doesn't really, in my opinion, buy me much. It's how does you show up on a planet? What do you see? Is more what I want to look like. And then, of course, in the standard Traveller universe, you've got invasive species for the last 10,000 years on some of the world. So it's not necessarily a pure ecosystem anyway. What are we doing with donkeys out here in the middle of nowhere? Yeah. So, or eight-legged ponies, as the scouts kind of screwed up on their logo. So there's, but I want it to be able to be something that you can use. Here's the basic stats for the planet. This is the sort of things, and that one supplement was it? I can't remember now if it was 2 or 9. I don't think it was 2. That just had a bunch of tables. That's good in that they talked about the behaviors of the animals, but it doesn't really give you a feel for the world, right? I mean, it's a carnivore. Okay, that could be what? So I want to deal with things like the overall look and feel of various things. Do most of the creatures have 6 limbs or 4? Are they scaly? Are they hairy? Are they something we didn't think of, like blobs? I want to have that flexibility built in, and have it be descriptive, because I think that would be more useful for a referee to be able to describe the world. And again, one of those things where you can either randomly decide or you can pick the one you want, for the basic plan of various types of major phylum or phyla, probably. Been a long time since Latin.
I want to have animal friends like the Herculoids. They had blobs and let's see, rhinoceros monster with 6 legs that shot exploding rocks. Laser dinosaur flying thing.
Yeah, I think we want to have them make a little bit more sense than that.
Ah, damn.
I could probably rationalize a laser on some sort of feature, but I'd almost think it'd be more likely to be a plant. But I don't know. Something, focus the sunlight that you're already using.
No shape-shifting blobs.
Well, again, the problem is we're working from a single example, right? We only know of one planet with life on it, and we have to assume, perhaps incorrectly, that the big picture rules act the same. Of course, the reason I abandoned that old star system generation program years and years ago was because when they actually started to find real exoplanets and systems, they didn't look like the solar system. So to find a planet with life on it, is it gonna even make sense to us? Don't know. But for Traveller purposes, it's going to be, I was thinking about defining it as what do you want your aliens to look like? Do you want Star Trek aliens, Star Wars aliens, or alien aliens?
I always like the aliens from Farscape.
Yeah.
Being a Jim Henson company or whatever, they didn't always have to stick to humans with bumpy heads.
Right, and it's from that perspective, it's budget related, right? Plus, there's also just, even think of Avatar. Everything on that planet is not like the intelligent species. Why? Because we have to get into their characters, and if they looked like giant spiders, it wouldn't be as interesting,
right?
Or we wouldn't be as involved in it. So, yeah, trying to determine whether I want to make it be, you know, choose how alien you want your life to be. The basic traveler assumption is pretty much a bunch of carbon-based life forms that, for the most part, I mean, if you see any of the animals and things, they kind of look like, you know, versions of things that could exist on Earth. Whether it's a giant octopus thing or a swamp thing, you know, I don't necessarily want to go that route, but maybe things do all converge. I mean, there's already convergent evolution on this planet where, you know, sharks and dolphins kind of look like the same shape, even though they're entirely different. What would it look like on a different world? Do you want to get really weird, or you just want to default to things that make sense in the ecosystem because that's the shape that's streamlined in the water and got big nasty teeth in the front. So,
and also more familiar to the player. I mean, it's
right.
You know, it's easier to describe like an alien space orca, you know, than it is a completely something that, you know, a life form that you're just making up, you know.
Yeah, but I want to put some structure around it, so that at least when you pick the type of critter, then the other types of critters that surround it make sense.
Right. When I was a kid, I used to love that Barlow's Guide to Extraterrestrials.
Oh yeah, that book's expensive if you buy it now.
Oh yeah, I saw it hardback at Barnes and Noble, but I didn't pick it up.
Is it the original though?
I don't know if it must be a reprint.
Probably no, because a friend of mine had one and I picked one up a few years back, but I paid a lot for it. Well over $100 anyway, or maybe it was $4. But it's and again, he did the whole ecosystem, right? He built the world, and then the critters. He probably started with the art, but I mean, it was all a consistent sort of world where the stuff all kind of fit together. That's the sort of thing that we want a world to look like. But like I said, it's not as simple as tables, and it's not as simple as this giraffe has 6 legs.
Right.
So I don't know. It's something I want to do right, and that's the thing. Sort of where I'm stuck on Sky Raiders as well is I want to do it right. I want to make it interesting and fun, and sometimes I get caught up on the details and gotta remember what the audience is, right? I mean, this is supposed to be something you can use to play Traveller with.
Right. Well, it's still nice to have be grounded in well thought out ideas, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's what I did with World Builders, especially. It's there's nothing that violates science in there, and you've got a lot of stuff, including things that I added in some of those blue boxes just because I didn't know the answer, and so I had to go digging and try to find out what the answer was for certain things, like how big is that thing in the sky? What's the formula for how big something is? It's not a complicated thing, but still, kind of get an idea of how big that moon looks in the sky, or how big the star looks, things like that. How far to the horizon? I don't think that's in that book. I put it in the vehicle book because of line of sight, and I think that's probably not going to stay in there. But it's not a hard formula, but it's something to keep in mind, right? If you're shooting a laser beam, it kind of matters how small the world is, because if it's on the other side of the horizon, you can't arc your laser beam. Well, gravity maybe, but still.
Right. So, what are your other interests? You interested in more games? Developing any?
Yeah, I was kind of hoping to see if we could sneak in a reprint of the Fifth Frontier War game, along with all the campaign stuff. But that's not really the business that Mongoose is in. But it can be approached, I think, there's enough interest in those old World Tamers and World Builders handbooks on how to build and run a small colony or small government, and from that there should be rules for basically trillion credit squadron rules for building up industry and ships, and you can then turn that into Fifth Frontier War counters as far as strengths and stuff, and you can have a interstellar war game, whether it's the actual Fifth Frontier War, whether it's a Pocket Empire sort of thing. I think that would be interesting. I'm not sure if it's something that would come out of Mongoose, but I'd have a lot of fun with it, especially if you could build it up from those components. We could. There's a little bit of that in the old 2300, where it was sort of a colony timeline thing. The first edition of the Mongoose 2300, Traveller 2300. I don't think it was in the original, but I can't remember now, from the 80s. The original Traveller 2300, they called it, until they figured that was confusing. But just the idea of, this is your colony, these are the events that happen, it grows, it doesn't grow, you have some sort of infrastructure built up. All that is stuff that I tried to sneak in a little bit into the vehicle book, and well, not a vehicle.
You're sneaky.
Yeah. Well, a vacuum train line is not a vehicle. It's I hope to keep at least the rules for how fast the trains go, but as for building and maintaining a factory and a railroad line or a road, or that stuff probably belongs in a different book. But that book could run the whole start with your settlement, and pretty soon you're playing a 4X game, right? You're developing and exploring and fighting or whatever.
Right, cool. All right.
Like Civilization. But yeah, again, I'm not sure if that's really something that Mongoose is going to want to do, but maybe I'll find somebody who wants to do something similar to that.
Yeah, it sounds like an interesting project for sure. Some of these old games may make more sense as computer games, or
They do. I've played Civilization since it came out, and honestly, after Civilization 5, I think they've kind of gone sideways, because they're getting a little too cutesy, and it's not I wish there was an engine for that you could use to develop your own scenarios a little better. Somebody's made a generic version of, I think, Civilization 2, where it sort of works like that. But just having that game engine available to do, to put your own tech levels or progression charts or things like that into it would be really good, and that would be a computer game. I mean, obviously, it would make more sense as a computer game, but you can't do a computer game without a big budget these days, right? You need a whole team of...
What about like Traveller Catan? That might be cool.
You mean like a box game?
I have a Star Trek Catan, where you lay down all these different planets and they produce different things every turn. And you get to collect, the things that your planet produces, food or dilithium or whatever. And then the recipes involve dilithium or food or whatever. And if you can have different Star Trek characters that you can only have one at a time. So if you have Scotty, you can build a ship out of dilithium or dilithium or duranium, whatever their metal thing is, and any other thing. So it could be food and dilithium. You can make a ship out of it.
That may be too much detail. But on a kind of I was going down a tangent, and I found actually off the Atomic Rockets site, a link to the Traveller. The PDW did a thing called the game to move their future from Twilight 2000 to basically to 2300 AD. So it was like a 5-year. The rules that are quote unquote published aren't detailed enough to actually run a game out of, but it kind of gives a framework for it. That sort of thing would be cool to do as a generic game. I mean, it's sort of like Civilization, but it's different. But there's still, I could see that they still have like you need to have industry and infrastructure and resources, and that was done on tabletop with people running. I don't know how long it took them to do it though. It was like 6 or 8 people each with 3 different countries, running 5-year turns for 300 years to make the environment where everybody spoke French. Oh, not everybody speaks French, but still. I don't know.
Interesting.
I think that game would have sold more if the dominant civilization wasn't France, and I apologize to the French people out there, but if you're going to publish something in English, maybe you could have made either the Americans or the Australians or the Texans win as opposed to the French be dominant. And there's an American arm, but it's just when your main monetary unit is in French and you're not sure how to pronounce it, it kind of takes away from the game a bit, in my opinion. But
I see. All right.
At least they let the result. Speak for themselves. They played the game, and this is what happened.
Right.
There's a whole section on atomic rockets about doing future histories. That's just kind of a sidetrack because it doesn't really help me get any of my current projects done, but it helps me think about the sort of stuff that I'd like to do for a wargaming or civilization-like game. Because I don't like Civilization 7 at all, but again, maybe it's just because I'm old and crotchety at this point. But I just don't like how they've taken what they've done with it. But that's just my opinion.
I haven't played it recently, so I can't really speak on it. I did like Age of Empires, the competing.
Yeah, that's part of the real time though, and I'm too slow to play real time.
Yeah, there's that.
Gotta be turn based. Gotta be turn based, or I can't play it because of my attention span, or my cat gets sick, or something happens, and next thing you know, my city's being overrun by barbarians.
All right. Hey, ready for some silly traveler questions?
Sure.
All right, cool. Do you have your D66 ready?
Okay. All right. Blue is the 10s. All right.
All right, go ahead and roll.
41.
41. If you could make a Traveller movie or TV series, what would the plot be?
Pirates, for sure. Pirates of Grenax. That was the thing that really kind of drew me back into Traveller after all these years. That one was really well done and fun.
What is it that you think would make a good TV plot?
Well, I think it would make a good series because there's a lot of interconnected stuff, and it, basically covers an area and a bunch of different adventures over a period of time, and you get to play pirates, of course, which makes it even more fun.
Right. All right. Good answer.
Although a lot of people have taken it, and that's the thing. A lot of people have taken it in different directions, but I would think that kind of the main do the pirate thing as opposed to go off on a tangent sort of thing. It's a sandbox, but the main plot would make it, I think, a decent series.
Awesome. All right. Want to do another?
Sure.
All
right. And now we have 25.
25. Would you rather be a free trader or a part of a mega corporation?
Free trader.
Why?
Because who wants to be a cog in a giant wheel? I mean, that doesn't sound like any fun at all.
All right. Fair enough. All right, let's do another.
51.
Did you say 51 or 61?
5-1.
5-1. What's the biggest disaster that ever happened to your crew in a Traveller session?
Well, there was a nuke. Yeah, pretty much. I think nuking the Anagathic farm way back was a problem, especially when you're in the water. But that was a while ago.
All right. Want to do one more and then wrap it up?
All right, we can do one more. Yeah. Oh, I already rolled that. Roll it again.
Flip the numbers.
56.
Do you say 56?
Yeah, 56.
Okay. If you had to put together a Traveller crew of famous sci-fi characters, who would you recruit?
Ooh. Well, it's the crew. We need space people, right? So, do we really want Han Solo flying this thing? Nah, I probably want Luke flying the thing, right? We need Scotty as the engineer, of course, because he can fix anything. I don't know. I mean, part of the fun is inventing your own characters. That makes it kind of hard for me to want to put together a crew of pre-existing ones. And you get all the character interactions are all different, and I hate to say that's kind of a lame answer, but the truth of it is it's the interactions that make it interesting. So I don't really know who I would use for the rest of the crew.
Who would be your science officer?
Well, there's the obvious answer, right? But
Rodney McKay?
oh, I forgot all about Stargate Atlantis. That would be an interesting character for that role. It's not great with names, more with faces, right? So it makes it hard in some of the more obscure stuff too.
Right. Who would be your medical officer?
What's his name? The one on Star Trek Discovery.
Dr. Phlox? No, the doctor on Discovery is Dr.
Oh, it's an African name, and I forget. I can't. Like I said,
Dr. Matimbe or something like that.
Yeah.
I was getting my doctors mixed up.
Yeah, because he's sort of actually kind of a.
Oh, that's Brave New Worlds, isn't it?
Oh, you're right. It's Brave New Worlds. I'm sorry. You're absolutely right. I was just getting, like I said, names, confusion. Bad with names. Remember my own because I have a name tag.
All right, man. Well, I think we've come to the end of our silly questions. If people want to get in touch with you, or if they want to find your titles, where should they go?
Well, the Mongoose store, drive through. I can go look at my own titles to see how they're doing. nice to see something hit platinum. So I do have a extremely old and broken website, geir.org, geir.org, which I will at one point take down entirely and redo and make pretty. Another thing I can do after I retire. I'm on the Mongoose forums pretty much daily. And if you have questions about any of my books, I will do my best to answer them. Although sometimes the answer is, well, what do you want to do with it? But as far as specific rules, I'm pretty good at looking up my own stuff and then occasionally finding errors. I've been collecting errata from various things on the forum. So if we ever do a reprint, then I have a list of things that either unclear or wrong. Yeah, you can send me email at geir@geir.org, spelled the same way. and I will try to reply in a timely fashion. That's
Awesome.
probably the best way. Yeah, but if it's specific to Traveller stuff, the Mongoose forum is a pretty good place to get a response from me, especially if it's a question that others might be interested in. You can do private messages there as well.
All right, cool. I'll put links in the description on this interview so people can find you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, cool. Well, hey, Geir, thank you so much for supporting this event. It means a lot to me that I got so much support from the Traveller community, and thank you so much.
You're welcome. It's fun. Hopefully people will put up with my hour of rambling, but at least I've enjoyed it. And we'll probably do it again next year.
I think people find it interesting. They're still watching videos from last year, and all the years before. So somebody out there likes what we're doing. All right, folks. I've been talking with my friend Geir Lanesskog, a freelance writer for Mongoose, who's written such books as the Robot Handbook, the Central Supply Catalog Update, Spinward Extents, and more. Thanks again for joining us, and until next time, happy traveling. Don't fly solo through the galaxy. Click like to join our alliance. Subscribe for your crew pass, and enable notifications to never miss an encounter. This journey is fueled by my patrons. Thank you, patrons. Feel the thrill of discovery. Become a patron and join the adventure.